Hello everyone, this is Hani and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to continue the lecture number 6 of the course MATLAB for Beginners, and I'm going to continue our discussion about the for loop and while loop. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the examples script. We added last time 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scripts or examples, and today we're going to cover more examples. I'm going to start with the while loop examples, and then I'm going to have some examples on the break and continue keywords. So let's get started. I'm going to add a section here, example 6, and this is going to be while loop, right? Some people are confused about the for loop and the while loop. So the basic idea here is to use for loop all the time, except when you do not know how many iterations you're going to run your loops. Then at that time you need to use the while loop. For example, if you want to read from a file and you are not sure how many lines you're going to read, in this situation you use a while loop and you stop when there are no more lines to read. Another example is when you use the Taylor series in mathematics to find some approximate values for some of the functions like cosine and sine, for example. In this situation, you are not sure how many terms or how many iterations you're going to compute, but you're going to stop when the difference between the result of the current iteration and the result from the previous iteration is very, very small. So it's based on a condition that the difference is small. It's not based on how many iterations we have, right? So in this situation, you need to use the while loop, not the for loop. So in this first example, I'm going to show you that you can run the while loop forever without knowing when to stop, right? So in our first example, we are going to ask the user to input some numbers, right? And each time the user is going to input this number, we are going to return the sum to the user. But how do we know the end? We are not sure. Okay, the end is going to be defined or decided by the user. When the user hits a specific letter on the keyboard, then the program is going to stop, right? So let's try this example. So in our example, ask the user if they want to continue with the program. Okay. If yes, then ask the user to provide a number. Okay, then add this number to previous numbers. If no, then stop the program. So in this program, I'm going to have a variable answer, okay, and I'm going to give it the letter y. I'm going to tell you why now. We have the variable sum, and initially we store 0 in it, and then we write the while loop. Okay, so the while loop needs a condition, so our condition here, and then ends. Okay, and then there are many statements here, several statements here. So what is the condition? The condition is going to be, is the answer if the user is yes or no. Do I want to continue? Yes or no to stop, right? So this is going to be our condition. That's why I need this variable here, answer, to hold the condition initially. So answer equals to y. If the value of answer, or if the value stored in answer equals to y, then run the statements here. If not, then stop. While loop should exit. So we're going to do this. First, I'm going to ask the user to enter some numbers. Please enter a number. This number, I'm going to store it in a variable. So let's call it x for now. So if you know this function asks the user to enter a number. And when the user enters a number, this number is stored in the variable x. And then in this line, I'm going to say sum equals to sum plus x. okay? Which means here, whatever the user inputs, okay, this is input from the user, added to the summation of the older inputs, right? So we initialize by 0 because there are no inputs initially, and then as long as the user is adding more inputs, sum is updated, okay? The variable sum is updated and added to the new input, and so on, okay? And then what we do next is we ask the user if they want to continue or not. Do you want to add more numbers? Okay, and then we say y or n. So the user should answer with y or n. And then this function input can take more than one argument or one parameter. The first parameter is a message, and the second parameter here could be S, here stands for string. That means that the user is entering a value, and this value is treated as a string, okay? So this is going to be evaluated to yes or no, or y or n, according to the user's input. So if the user enters y, the whole term is evaluated to y. If the user enters n, the whole term is evaluated to n. This is just not assigned to anything, so we need to assign it to a variable, and our variable is answer. Okay, so we ask the user a question. The value of the answer to this question is assigned to the answer variable. So answer variable is updated either to yes or no, or to y or n. Okay, so if it becomes n, so we're going to get back to line 41 and check if answer is y or n. So if it's n, this is going to be false as the program exits. If it's y, then the program is going to run again and again until it becomes n, right? I'm going to run this section. So the program asks me, please enter a number. I'm going to enter 5. Oh, I forgot here to add a display. I'm going to display this sum here, okay? So let's rerun it again. I'm going to say n, okay, and then rerun it again, okay? So let's run section again. So please enter a number. So this is going to be 5. So now the summation is 5, okay? Now it asks me if I want to continue or not. So I'm going to say y. It asks me again to enter a new number. So 4. So if I enter 4, sum now contains 5 plus 4 is going to be 9. So yes, it's 9. It asks me again if I want to continue. So yes. It asks what number I need to add. So 19. So the whole number is going to be 28. So yes, it's 28. And I could do this forever, but I'm going to end it now with n. Okay, I can add here space. What I wanted to say here is that this program is going to run forever until this condition is not valid anymore. Okay, and this is the main difference between the for loop and the while loop. So the difference between the for loop and the while loop is that you use while loop when you are not sure how many iterations you have in your program. So this is our first example in the while loop. Okay, now let's continue with the next example. So in the next example, I'm going to read some text from a file and display the text line by line. So let's consider this situation. A teacher asked the students to write some documents about Alexander the Great, and each student wrote a specific number of lines, but the teacher does not know how many lines in each text. So if you are the teacher, you have a text file that you don't know how many lines in this text file. And in fact, you have several text files, not only one text file. And you want to design a program, and this program runs for each text file the same way. One student might wrote 10 lines about Alexander the Great, and then another student wrote 12 or 15 lines, and so on. So you want a program that works with all of those files. So to do that, we are going to use the while loop, and we have to check for the end of file. Okay, so let's get started with this example. So I'm going to create a new section here, and this section I'm going to call it example 7, right? Still while loop, and in here we are going to read from a file. Okay, this is not a binary file, this is just a basic text file. Later in this course, I'm going to show you how to read from a binary file with specific formats. But for now, we're going to start with this very basic example. So I created a text file here. This is called text file.txt, and I added some lines here from Wikipedia. There are 5 lines in this text. We have the text file and we need to read from it. To read from a file, we need to open it. So we use a function named fopen. So fopen, this is a function, and it takes the location and the name for this file. So since we have the file in our folder, we can just write file.txt, right? So this is a function that opens this file. But this function, when it opens this file, it evaluates to a value, and this value we are going to store it in FID. Okay, FID is like the file ID. So the file ID, you get it from this function, right? We are going to use this file ID to move from one line to another. I'm going to show you how to read the file line by line, and then how to use it in a while loop. So to read a line, I'm going to use this function, fgetL. Okay, I think it stands for file get line, right? And then we give it what? The file ID, FID, right? So basically, this function is going to read a single line, the first line here, in this case, a single line, and have the FID point to the next line. So fgetL will read the first line that it encounters, and then after that, FID is going to point to the next line. So if I call fgetLine again, or fgetL again, with FID, now I'm going to read the next line. Now, this is a text. I need to store it in a variable, so I'm going to call this line, for example. Okay, let's try to display this. So display L for line. Okay, and after this function is being called, the file ID is going to point to the next line. So if I call this function again, it's going to read the next line. Okay, so if I have the same exact line of code here or statement here, and then say this line, okay, I'm expecting to read the first line here, and then move FID to the second line, display the first line, and then after it's moved, using this code is going to read the next line. It's going to store it in the variable line again and display it. Okay, so let's see how it works. So run this section. So yes, we have 2 lines here. Okay, and we can do this several times. But of course, we're not going to repeat writing it for each line, because maybe you are having 1000 line or more. Okay, so instead we are going to write a while loop. I'm going to say while condition and then end. We are testing if we reached the end of the file or not. Okay, because I said that FID is moving from one line to the next until it reaches the last line. There is a function that detects that FID reaches the last line. This function is called FEOF. Stands for file end of file. This is what I'm thinking. I'm not sure about the first F, but EOF here stands for end of file. I assume this is file end of file. It takes argument, and this argument is the FID. So whenever we call the fgetL with the FID, FID is going to move to the next line. Okay, so FID here is changing. This is what I wanted to say. And then whenever it changes, the output of this function is going to change. Okay, so this function here returns yes or no, or 0 or 1, or true or false. If the FID reaches the end of file, this function evaluates to true, so it's going to be 1. But if it doesn't reach, it evaluates to 0 or false, right? So we want this while loop to work if this is false, if we didn't reach the end of file. We need this expression to be false, right? But we know that while loop works only when the condition is true, okay? But we want this condition here to be false. So we want the opposite of this condition, right? So we want to negate this condition, okay? So we add this symbol here. So this symbol here is part of the conditional operators that we have covered before, and it basically gets you the opposite of what is here. So it stands for not. So when we write, for example, these 2 symbols here, this stands for not equal. And if we have a function that returns true, like EOF, if this returns true, okay, so if we add this symbol here, the whole term is false. And if this is false and we add this symbol here, the whole term is true. So when we write that here, when FEOF of FID is false, this whole term is true and the statements are going to run. This first term here without this symbol, the not symbol, is going to be false as long as we are not at the end of the file, right? So we want this to run as long as we are not at the end of the file. So we require this to be false, but we require the whole term here to be true, right? That's why we add this symbol here for not. If you do not understand it completely now, you will understand it soon when we go deep in this course. But for now, if you want to read from a file, you need to test the opposite of this condition here, that you have not reached the end of file. So if you have not reached the end of file, run this line assigned the text coming from the this function. So it's f get l and it takes FID. Okay, this function is going to read the first line and put the FID on the second line. FID now is at the second line or the next line. Okay, and then we need to display this line. When we go to the end of the statements, okay, we get back to while. So now we see FID is at the next line. This next line is not at the end of the file. So this term here is false and the whole term here is true. So while loop is going to continue, right, until it displays the line and gets to the next line and so on until it reaches the last line. When it reaches the last line, this function is going to read it and then put the FID to the end of file, and then we go back to line 54 and ask ourselves the FID at the end of file. If it's yes, then the whole term is false, okay, and then while loop is going to stop and this is not going to work anymore. Okay, so we are expecting here that 4 lines are going to be displayed, and after 4 lines FID will be at the end of the file, and because of that while loop is going to stop. Okay, so let's try this. I'm going to clean this one and clear the variable. So let's run this section. 1 2 3 4 5. So we have 5 lines. Now we want to test if this code still works if we add more lines or not. Let's say another student is providing another text document and we want to read all the lines in this text document. Let's just update the text file. I'm going to write here. So we are having now 2 more lines. So let's see if this code is robust enough to run correctly with the change of number of lines. So CLC and clear, and then let's run again. So yes, we have here these 2 lines added. So we are missing just one last thing here. We need to close this file just after we finish reading. So I'm going to write here fclose. This is a function that closes the file, and I'm going to give it again the FID. Okay, and CLC, and then run it again. Yes, we have the same output. Alright, so this example is a little bit sophisticated example, and it just show you how to read from a file line by line. You can read from a file if it has numbers, and also you can read from a file if it's in a binary format. We will see this later in this course. But for now, this is how to use a while loop when you want to read a file. This is the last example with a while loop. We are going to have more examples, but using the break and continue. So let's add a section here. And in this section, I'm going to write example 8, and then I'm going to have break. Okay. The break keyword basically is breaking the whole loop. Okay, so you get out of the loop. If we want to end the program or end the loop and get out of the loop for any reason, as a developer or as a programmer, you should have a condition. When it happens, you need to get out of this loop, otherwise you might have some problems. I am going to use this previous example here, okay, and edit it. Okay, so copy and paste. Okay, and I'm going to do some changes here. Let's call this, for example, result. Okay, and I'm going to change this. So this is going to be results, and I'm going to change the formula here. Okay, so let's say that our program is taking a number from the user and dividing whatever a result by this number. So we should have result divided by x. here. The program is going to ask the user again to enter a number. When the user enters this number, the program is going to display a result divided by this number and asks the user again to enter if they want to continue or not, and so on. So let's run this section and see. So please enter a number 5. So we expect to have 20 here because the result is 100 divided by 5, so it's 20. And then we ask the user again yes or no, so it's y, and then we ask to enter a number, and here I'm going to enter 0. The result is not defined, it's infinity, okay, or it's not defined in some other programming languages. We want the program to stop here. Okay, so if the user enters 0, the program is not going to show anything. It's just going to show an error message and break, exit. So we need to have a condition here. We need to have if statement here just before this code. We say if x equals to 0, do something. Okay, and what is this? Just display this message, can not divide by 0, and then break and then end. So breaking here is going to exit from the whole loop. So let's see how it works. Okay, so let's run clear CLC. Okay, run the section and see. Okay, so it asks me to enter a number, so 5, so it's 20, and then yes, continue, and then another number 7 here, and then this is a number, and then yes, and then 0. What happens? I have this message saying cannot divide by 0, and then exit. Okay, so this is how to use the break. When we call break here, we exit out of the loop, of this loop. Okay, and same for for loop. Okay, so if we have for loop and we use the keyword break, we exit out of this loop, right? I just want to let you know that this block is treated as a statement, a single statement, because we mentioned before in the lecture for the if statement that if statement itself is one statement. It's a multi-line statement, but it's still one statement. So this is how to use the keyword break. Okay, for the keyword continue, the only difference is that we exit this iteration only. Okay, that means we're not going to continue here, these 2 lines, but we get back to while. Okay, so let's copy the same example again. I'm going to have a section here, and this section I'm going to call it example 9, continue. And I'm going to copy the whole code, copy that, paste it here, right? I'm going to have some few changes. Okay, so if x equals to 0, just like that, I'm going to say cannot divide by 0, and then please provide another number. Okay, and then here break is going to be continue. Okay, or please enter another number. Okay. So what happens here? I'm going to run this code. It sees that the answer is yes, that's fine, and then checks if x is 0. Then we continue. Continue here means I'm going to skip this line and get back to the first line in while loop. Okay, and check answer again and so on. Okay, so continue means we're skipping the rest of the statements in this run for this loop or this iteration, and start again from the beginning. Okay, while break, it just exits the loop. Okay, no more iterations to run. Okay, so let's run this example and see. So let me first clear and CLC. So let's run here from run section again, and then asks me about the first number, so it's 5, and yes or no. Yes, I want to continue, and then 4, that's fine, and then yes, I want to continue. So now if I enter 0, it will not exit the loop. It will re-ask me again. Okay, so it says cannot divide by 0, please enter another number. Okay, and it gets me to this line here. Okay, so I enter 6. Okay, and then yes, and let's say we have 0 again, so 0 again, it will send me to this line, and so on. Okay, the only way to exit this while loop is to say no. Okay, so I'm going to say please enter a number. I'm going to say 8 and then no. So we're done here. Okay, so this is how to use the break keyword and the continue keyword. And by this we came to the end of this lecture. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned from it. If you think it's useful, please share it so that other people can benefit from it. And please subscribe if you are not subscribed yet. If you have any comments or questions, just let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.